what did you do?
I made the trolley problem real so we could see how the ethics would actually play out. There are 5 workers on this track and 1 over there. Here are the levers to switch the tracks. Make a choice.
The thing is, I mean, ethically speaking...
No time, dude! Make a decision!
Well, it's tricky. I mean, on the one hand, if you ascribe to a purely utilitarian worldview...
Okay, so, what did we learn? Chidi? Talk it out, buddy. What are we thinking?
He thinks he just killed a bunch of people with a trolley.
It's just a simulation. I would never make you kill real people.
Oh, well, that's reassuring, because some of the parts of the fake people flow into my mouth!
Michael, can we just go back to the classroom?
We never left. Here, I'll show you.
Look, see, buddy? None of this was real.
Well, they're fake people, but their pain is real. Does that make sense? There have to be stakes, or it's just another thought experiment.
This is awful.
You specifically asked me if there was a way I could connect with the material more. I'm trying, you guys.
Sorry. You're right. I want to help you understand this.
Thank you, Chidi. So, let's try again.
Oh, I thought maybe we would have a discussion.
No, the whole point is to play out the scenario in real time.
Quick, Judy, what's your decision?
Okay, I can do this. I am choosing to switch tracks, so that way I only kill 1 person.
Oh, forgot to tell you, this is the scenario where you actually know one of the people. It's your friend Henry there.
Cheaty! How are you, mate?
Henry, move!
Oh, nice trolley.
Move out of the way!
I can't, Cheaty. My boots are stuck in the tracks.
Henry, move!
Anyway, long time no see.
Oh my God!
Again, just a simulation. An almost impossibly lifelike simulation.
Would someone's foot really fly off their body like that? That was kind of cool.
So, let's talk about the trolley problem. For those of you who have never seen the show, that's a clip from the show The Good Place. It's an incredibly interesting show that actually deals with a lot of ethics, moral philosophy, things like that. And they've got a whole episode on our trolley problem, right? So last week, I proposed the trolley problem to you guys. It's a very, very famous ethical example, and everyone that bothered to reply said that they would save the 5 people and kill the 1. Right, that they would switch the track, and that they would take a utilitarian perspective here. Now, on the raw face, that seems like a good idea, right? 5 for 1 is, I mean, that's mathematically that seems like a win, right? Now, where this gets tricky though is what if we consider other variables that were not given in the original scenario? So, for instance, what if the 1 person is really young, right? And virile, and maybe they're really bright, right? Maybe we've got a young Steve Jobs on one side of the side of the track, and on the other side we've got 5 90-year-olds. What do you do then? Is 5 90-year-olds worth 1 Steve Jobs? How do you figure out that math? Right? Or what if it's somebody that you know on the tracks? What if it's your boyfriend or girlfriend or one of your parents? Right? Can you pull the lever to kill them to save the other 5? Well, if not, then it makes us call into question your earlier assertion. Because earlier, before knowing any of those variables, the simple calculus was very simple, right? You just said, oh, well, 5 is more than 1, so there we go. But the more that you spend time thinking about this and the potential variables and really what the ethical quandary is here, the more difficult it becomes. So there's a couple of things to consider here, which is one. Well, actually, let's look at a counter example. So there's a variation. There are several variations of the trolley problem. One of them is this variation here, and it's called the fat man problem. All right? And the fat man variation is pretty simple. It's the same trolley, right? Same trolley here. It's coming. You can't stop it. It's on its way. It's going to kill these 5 dudes right here. You're on a bridge over top of the trolley, And you have the option where you could potentially push off a very large individual and they will fall down and their weight will stop the trolley. But you have to shove them to their death. You've got to be the one to actually push them over, watch them fall, and watch them get destroyed by the trolley. Does that feel different? It probably does. Some of you, it might not, but for some of you, that's going to feel different, right? You don't like the idea of actually having to shove the person, right? Because now you're much more involved than being a bystander off over there. But the calculus here hasn't really changed any. It's still the same problem, right? Which is it okay to do a wrong thing for a good outcome? Remember we talked in the introduction to ethics video about how when we talk about ethical things, we talk about right and wrong, and good and good and bad. And right and wrong is the moral quality of like any action, and good and bad deals with outcomes, usually for a group or a social unit, right? So really, what the trolley question is asking us is it okay to do a wrong action to serve a social good? Is it okay to murder to save 5 people? And you may think, oh, this is just some abstract blah 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 thing, right? But it actually has quite a bit of practical application to it as well. This one's still kind of abstract, but it grounds it a bit more in reality. I'm a doctor, all right? I work in the emergency room, and one of the doctors upstairs from the pediatrics department was talking to me on my lunch break about how they've got 4 kids that are on the waiting list for organ transplants, and they're just waiting, but the list is long, and if they don't get an organ transplant soon, they're probably going to die. And these kids are young. You're talking like 5, 6, somewhere in that age range, and they're just waiting on some organs that they can use. And I'm in the ER, and that night, some Russian mobster comes in, right? He's been shot. He needs a very risky surgery. And when we are getting his paperwork ready, I notice that he is a universal donor, which means that he can probably donate his blood and organs to anybody, and they will probably be received, right? So he is a universal donor. Now, the surgery that he's going into is a very risky surgery. If he were to happen to die on the operating table, they would just chalk it up to one of the risks of the operations. Now, does the doctor purposely botch the operation to kill the Russian mobster so that way those kids upstairs can have some organs and keep living? Or is that wrong? And so he does the operation like he's supposed to and saves the Russian mobster's life, knowing that those kids may die waiting on organs. That one probably feels a little bit harder, right? Probably feels a little trickier. It's fundamentally the same problem, right? It's fundamentally the same question, which is it okay to commit a morally wrong action if you think that it's serving a greater social good? It's the same moral calculus that we go into whenever we do something like war. Right? Only we do crazy math then. So, for instance, 9/11, about 3,000 American civilians died in the World Trade Center catastrophe whenever planes flew into it, right? So, we decided that was worth going to war for. So we go to war for it, and at this point, the last time that I checked, and it's been a while, admittedly, there were over 100,000 civilian casualties in the Middle East from the War on Terror. How many Middle Eastern civilians equal 1 American civilian? What's the moral calculus with that before we're doing bad? So these things seem like they're just kind of abstract, out here, silly notions, but these kind of ethical considerations are really the like underpinning of a lot of our existence and definitely a lot of our social fabric, right? Here's a really interesting one. every $1 billion that a billionaire holds on to, right? So, you know, in order to be a billionaire, you have to have $1 billion worth of stuff, right? And that's what makes you a billionaire. So every $1 billion worth of stuff that a billionaire holds on to, it costs about 100,000 yearly jobs in the economy. So every year that he holds on to that $1 billion, there's 100,000 people out there that could have had jobs that don't, because he's holding on to that $1 billion. Is that okay? Is that ethical? What about whenever you get to somebody like Jeff Bezos, who's got almost like $600 billion or whatever it is now? Is that ethical? Is that ethical whenever we have people that are homeless? Is it ethical for somebody to have that much money? Like, for instance, right now, I don't know if you know this, but if you took the 5 richest people in America, they have more wealth than the bottom 40% of America. So that's like 5 people have more wealth and money than, it's about 140 million people. If you took all the stuff that those 140 million people had and put it all together, those 5 people would still have more. Is that ethical? What's the math there? What does that look like? And so, when we dive into ethics a little bit deeper, we start to consider all these different elements of it, and we start to consider how these ethical systems and ethical dilemmas actually apply to our own moral existences and our own framework for reality and for what our perception of the world is. So this week I've posted another ethical dilemma up. This one is actually based on a real world problem. It's about a person whose spouse has cancer, but the medicine is very expensive, and so he is unsure what to do. So our ethical dilemma actually is kind of based on this real life story of Martin Shkreli. I think that's how I pronounce it. Shkrel. I'm not sure if that's a long I or a short I. Anyways, he was a CEO of a pharmaceutical company, and he realized that he had a drug that was a necessary drug, Retrophin, right? I do believe that this is it, right? Daraprim. And Daraprim was a drug that was necessary to treat a specific disease. And it's kind of the only treatment for it. And it had been really, really, really cheap. So he decides that because he's got kind of a cap on that market, he's going to raise the price of it. Like, it goes from $13.50 to $750 per pill overnight. So that's a factor of 56 for a single dose. And his statement was, we own it, we made it, we own the patent to it, and so I can charge whatever I want for it because I have the right to make money. And people were really, really, really upset about this. And it raised a lot of questions about the ethics of medicine and how we treat people and how we look at these things. And the argument from the pharmaceutical companies is, hey, we spend a lot of money figuring out how to make these medicines. It takes a lot of years, it takes a lot of tests, it takes a lot of trials to figure out which chemicals work to treat certain things, and so we need to recoup those costs and then make a profit on top of that, and we have a right to do that. And then, other people were saying, yeah, but this is kind of crazy, $750 per pill, and I think the pill, I don't know if it's in here, but the pill cost them like $1 to make per dose. So, I mean, like, just an unbelievable profit margin there. And so it raised a lot of ethical questions there. And so our question this week is kind of rooted in that same idea, but it's got a couple of different variables in it. Unlike the trolley problem, this time I gave you a couple of different variables to consider. So please respond to that. Please do better than last week. Last week we did not have many people reply to our discussion thread. Like 4 people actually responded to the discussion thread out of everyone. That's really bad, guys. Like, that's really not good. So we need to do better there. So please reply to the discussion post. And then this Thursday, I've got kind of a guest speaker interview that I did with a friend of mine who actually has a master's degree in ethics, lives in Hawaii, and works in the criminal justice system. So Thursday is going to be a guest speaker kind of lecture. And I'm not going to give any assignments this week except to work on your ethical systems project, because those need to get done and they need to be in by this weekend. All right. So I think right now I've got the ethical systems project due date for this Sunday. So that gives you all week this week to work on it plus the weekend. So do make sure to get those done. I also moved a copy of my presentation example over into this folder, so that way you can see an example of what one looks like. And then I also moved over a copy of the instructions along with the group numbers on it. So if you have questions, as always, hit me up on Schoology or through email. I will be happy to answer questions for you. And yeah, that's all I've got for today. Like I said, come back on Thursday to check out our guest speaker, Mr. Dan Mistack. Yeah, and I'll see you guys then. Have a good one.